Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to go through or critique general sort of stretches and exercises for neck pain. And the reason why I wanted to go through this is it seems that there's a lot of exercises and stretches that people do under the proviso that it's good for their neck, that helps their neck pain go away, but ultimately don't work. There's so many neck stretches that people know about, and we'll go through maybe 2 or 3 different versions of them in a second, but they ultimately don't work. You might feel like it does something maybe while you're doing it, maybe for a little bit of time afterwards, but each of these exercises is basically characterized by the need to keep having to do them without having a period of time where you've progressed past them. Because what these exercises often do is that they treat the symptoms and not necessarily address the root underlying cause of a lot of that neck dysfunction. So what we want to get to is we want to go through, there's an upper trap stretch or a levator scap stretch, a general neck stretch, there's general neck movements, and there's a chin tuck. And for anyone who's watching this video, there's every chance you've performed one of those 3, if not all of them, or at least heard of those exercises before. But I want to plant that seed and say, well, look, there is potentially a better way to improve your neck function and range of motion, which we'll get to at the end of the video. So if you can hang around to the end of that, to that point, then you'll hopefully see why that exercise works really well. And these other exercises are okay, but don't ultimately fix the problem. You just have to keep doing them and doing them. And if you don't do them, there's every chance that you might keep getting tighter. So we want to make sure that we turn you into someone who has to do the neck stretches quite often to someone who used to do neck stretches. And it's quite easy to do in theory, but it just takes a little bit of practice to get there. So the first exercise is the upper trap stretch or the levator scap stretch. And the reason why we do this stretch is there's a group of muscles or a few muscles that attach from the neck into the shoulder or the shoulder blade. And for a lot of people, we often feel really tight in that area. So what we often see with this particular stretch is it's highlighted by either sitting on your arm or dropping that shoulder down and looking down almost towards your armpit, reaching over the top and sort of pulling. So the idea behind it is you're trying to stretch and elongate those tight muscles, and then the more you do that, the looser it gets. Now, the second exercise is generally just movements. So you'll get people say, look, let's get you to turn your head to the side a few times, turn your head to the other side a few times, maybe look up a few times, look down a few times, maybe tilt your head to one side, tilt your head to another side, in the hope that that's going to free up the joints of your neck. And the third exercise is the chin tuck, and how that looks is essentially being in a good posture and literally tucking your chin in. So essentially the chin's going back, you're not looking down or looking up, you're almost sort of horizontal to the ground, parallel to the ground. You're just taking that back, so giving yourself a double chin. And again, we give this out for people who have potential disc issues or some joint dysfunction in the hope that it makes a difference. Now, as I said, those 3 exercises are pretty common, they're very popular, and they're done with the best intentions. We think something's stiff, something's tight, so we need to perform those movements to make a difference. But the problem with this idea, the problem with this thinking, is that it doesn't address the specific nature of what's going on in your neck. So the way that the neck's structured is that you have your vertebra, so you've got your vertebral column that has a joint either side, and those joints are very deep. They're almost the central part of the spine, or the part of the central column of the spine, and all those muscles attach and anchor onto that spine. So what we find a lot clinically is that the root dysfunction that occurs in most necks is that deep dysfunction at the joints, potentially a disc, nerve root, whatever that is. But mechanically, we often see that joint stiffness, underlying potentially hidden joint stiffness, is the anchor that asks a lot of tissue to tighten, to either support it or to tolerate the position or the bad shape that you got into to create that dysfunction. So what we want to see with the upper neck stretch, for example, the upper trap and neck stretch, is that if your joints underneath are stiff and that's caused muscles to become tight over the top, just passively putting tension on those muscles does nothing to the deeper joint stiffness. So when you're in this position, for example, and you're doing your best work to try and free that up, you may be able to free that up. It may feel a little bit looser afterwards, but you're not changing the reason why that muscle is asked to be tight in the first place. So you have to do it again the next day and the next day and the next day in the hope that it starts to free up over time. But we need to maybe avoid doing the stretch and then get into the deeper joint stiffness, again, which we'll get to at the end, to change that so that we take away one of the signals that's asking those muscles to be tight in the first place. Now, the next two exercises, the general range of motion and the chin tuck, do have a more specific effect on the joints, but the problem with these movements is that they're broad movements. So if you have a joint in your neck, one particular joint on one side that's become stiff, your body has this amazing ability to take the path of least resistance. So if you have a stiffness anywhere in your body, whether it's your ankle or your hip or your lower back or your neck in this example, your body doesn't slow down and improve your movement to go through that stiffness. It basically just finds the stiffness and then goes around it. So when we're doing broad movements like a chin tuck or some head tilts or some rotations, essentially what you're practicing is you're practicing your body moving through the less stiff, the less tight areas. So if you get to a point where, say, the lower part of your neck runs into the end of your stiffness, your body's then going to move the rest of the joints above that to get that movement. It's not going to stop that movement, force it to get freer and allow that to move over time. The more you do these stretches, you will begin to free up that tissue eventually, because you're asking that in a really sort of small, low grade kind of way. But the point I wanted to make with this exercise, similar to the muscular stretch, the trap stretch from before, is that it's not specific enough to the underlying dysfunction. It's on the right track, of course, but it isn't specific enough to find where that handbrake is, take that handbrake off to allow the entire system to function better. So it's a thing that I see a lot where someone gets given a neck stretch and they're doing it with the best intentions, but they're not necessarily affecting change long term. Again, it can make you feel nice in the moment, but it doesn't fix anything, it doesn't solve anything beyond just doing the stretch. And as I said, it's something that you have to keep doing if you want to keep that low amount of progress that you've made in that stretch. So what we find instead, and we've done this before on the channel, but I wanted to do this in context of those stretches, is the best way I've ever seen to quickly and effectively mobilize neck tissue, whether that's for pain or just neck stiffness. The best exercise or stretch involves using a ball. So if you have any neck pain, if there's any degree of tenderness associated with things, you're welcome to use a tennis ball. I don't have one here, but a tennis ball, because it's softer, less dense, it's more gentle on the joints. Or if you feel comfortable, you can use a lacrosse ball, which is a little bit harder. So the reason why this is such a significant exercise is that you can find the exact part of your neck that's become tight and stiff and free that up. You can take that physical handbrake off so that everything around it can continue to move better, and you can get to the root cause of why that's become a problem. So again, if you feel like the particular area of your neck that's become stiff is the joint right at the base of your neck on the left-hand side for me, then we can put the ball in that area. So you can do this lying down on the ground. I'll do this up against the wall just because it works just as well. But the idea is, so from behind, if you can imagine that you have your spinal column or the bumps in the middle of your spine that are down the middle, we're going to place it in the middle of your neck, but just off to the side a little bit. So not all the way around to the side here, but just from the middle, then off to that side. And how that looks essentially is I'm in the middle here, I'm just letting it roll off to that side. And a lot of people, you'll need to turn your head a little bit to that same side just to make sure that you balance it. If you just roll it off to the side, there's every chance the ball rolls out. But once you've done this, you'll get a really good understanding of how you need to position yourself and maneuver yourself to get some pressure in those right areas. So the reason why this is such a powerful exercise is that I can be on that left-hand side for me. I can say, right, that feels very stiff or stiffish. I can then move it across to the other side and compare. And for me, this right-hand side doesn't feel stiff, tight, or tender at all. But when I come back across to the other side, it just feels like there's more restriction, the ball doesn't sink in as easy, there's maybe a tiny little bit of tenderness attached to it, if anything at all, and I can tell that this is a part of the body that's restricted. So even if you feel like you have neck pain that's up high or pain that goes down your arms, we want to systematically go up and down those areas to find the section that's not moving very well, the section that you're trying to mobilize and free up by doing those broader exercises, but not ultimately affecting a specific enough of a change. So again, once you spend 30 seconds to a minute here, you can then move the ball up a fraction, go hunting for the next joint or down. Generally with neck pain, a hidden feature of a lot of neck pain is a stiff upper back can create a lot of dysfunction, because again, if that upper back is stiff, then there's less room to move for the neck. The neck does require movement from your upper back to have normal neck motion. It's the same thing with the shoulder. So feel free to go, halfway down your shoulder blades and all the way up and down to the top of your neck, so that you can feel for the areas and just give it a once over to make sure that you're in the right spot. So I've come up a particular joint. This one feels stiffer and tighter again. So if I had only a minute or two to do this exercise, I'd want to come back to this spot more than the other one, just because that's going to have a bigger effect on me overall. And once you've done that, you should feel like those movements actually get better. The chin tuck for me doesn't feel anywhere near as restricted, and getting down into this position, all of a sudden I don't feel the same muscular tightness or level of tightness that I had before. So the ball exercise for the neck is a significant exercise for anyone with neck pain or any neck dysfunction in general, that almost makes the traditional neck stretches redundant, because you'll never find the same immediate benefits from a ball exercise that you will with a lot of the traditional stretches that we tend to give out. So hopefully that's a bit of an eye-opener into how to use your time more effectively, and how to make the time that you are applying to this, make it a lot more specific, so that you can see genuine results straight away. So hopefully that was a useful piece of information for you. If you did find that useful, we'd really appreciate it if you leave a like below, and if you would consider subscribing to the channel. It's just a great way to help these videos get out to more people. So if you found it really useful, it would be great if you could then interact with it, and it just helps other people find it as well. So that's the plan with these videos. We just want more and more people to see them. Hopefully start to restructure the way that a lot of people think about really common themes and ideas that are probably evolving without a lot of the information being thrown out to support, to highlight that, I guess. So stay tuned. So we'll come out with more and more videos as we go. But for today, hopefully that sort of highlights why a lot of neck pain stretches and neck pain exercises maybe aren't as good as we've thought they've been for a while, and that there's a really simple alternative that almost makes the other ones redundant. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you then. Bye.